Are you scared of giving free motion quilting a try? Don't be. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get started. My name is Irene from Sugaridoo, and today's video is all about getting started with free motion quilting. I did some free motion quilting on a few quilts when I just started out quilting, and today's the day that I'm going to dust out my quilting foot, because I just finished this quilt top and it screams for some free motion quilting. If you stay until the end of the video, I will give you my 5 top beginner's tips for free motion quilting. Oh, and by the way, did you know that I made a free ebook with 101 quilting designs for straight line quilting? So if you're still a bit hesitant after seeing this video, go check out the link in the description box below this video. Before we start free motion quilting, you first want to pop in your free motion quilting foot. So I'm just going to unscrew my walking foot. There it goes. This is what my free motion quilting foot looks like. So you have an adjustable screw here, which changes the height of your quilting foot. With this you can set it to the correct height above your quilt sandwich. I'm going to show you that in a second. But while I'm here, I'm also going to dust out this a little bit. You can also replace your needle before you start a new project. Always a good idea. Take out my bobbin. If you often skip stitches while you're free motion quilting, you could try and go clean out your machine and put in a new needle, because that could help to get better stitching. Putting back my bobbin. So now I'm all set up to install my free motion quilting foot. So this is different for every machine. On the newer machines you often have something like this, where you can also adjust the height of your foot. But on my very old machine that I have set up over here, I have a very different kind of quilting foot. This might be interesting if you also have a very old machine. This is quite an odd kind of free motion quilting foot. So this is it, and you can move this. So when you've installed it, like this, this thingy sits on top over here. So whenever your foot goes down, or whenever your needle goes down, you see it's released now. And then when your foot goes up again, it will also bring up the foot. So back to my Janome, and as I said, here's the screw, and when I turn it, you can see that my foot is going up. I'm just going to put it quite high, so then I can place my quilt sandwich underneath and adjust it. And here you see the feed dogs, and what they do when you're sewing. Normally they're moving along your fabric. So they're guiding your fabric when it's moving underneath your foot. But you don't want this, because with free motion quilting it goes in all directions. So you have to lower your feed dogs, and that's different for every machine. I have a switch over here, and then they're lowered. So now they will still move a bit, but they won't get above my stitching plate. So that's that. That makes my machine all ready for free motion quilting. Now I only have to get myself ready for free motion quilting, and I do that by wearing these gloves. These are gloves that I got with a quilting magazine, but I guess they are called quilting gloves or free motion quilting gloves. They have all these kinds of little knobs on the surface, so that makes sure that you have a lot of grip on your quilt, which really helps on quilting. So if you're going to do free motion quilting, do get a pair of quilting gloves. One last thing I almost forgot to tell you. You want to set your stitch length to 0. That's automated by my machine, so when I lower my feed dogs it's automatically set to 0. But you do want to do that for your machine if you do have to do it by hand. I have everything set up. I have my machine ready, I have my quilting gloves, and now I made a test sandwich. So I just used a piece of leftover batting and a piece of quilting cotton or other fabric that you have laying around, and I've just made a tiny sandwich. So that allows me to practice, to be able to make mistakes, to try out stuff, just to get to know your machine and your quilting food. Just compare it with a sheet of paper on which you can draw and doodle, and that does not have to be perfect or pretty. When you have your quilt sandwich under your quilting foot, you can adjust the height to make sure that the foot just hovers over the quilting fabric and that it doesn't push down too much. As you can see here, I'm pushing into my sandwich, and that way it's not able to move anymore. So when I just place it a little bit higher, I'm able to move around my fabric. I've put in a white thread so it's contrasting with my blue fabric, and I'm just going to lower my needle and bring it up again. And then I'm going to pull on my thread. And as you can see, my bobbin thread is coming up. And I'm going to grab it and pull it through. There we go. Just bringing both threads underneath my quilting foot. And then I'm going back to the place where my bobbin thread came up. So these two threads, I'm just going to leave them here. At the end, when I'm done quilting, I will make a tiny knot very close to my fabric and then use a needle to bury it in between the two layers of my quilt. But for now, I'm just going to leave them here. Maybe trim this off a little bit. There we go. So now we're going to make our first free motion stitches. Are you excited? Let me get my quilting gloves. First, just go and make some stitches. Put on your foot and just see what happens. So my needle starts moving. Okay, that's good. You can move your needle in the same spot, no problem. You can move a little bit. See how it goes. What happens? You can move very fast, or you can move your needle very fast. Let me turn my work so you can see what just happened here. So here you see where I just started, and then I moved my fabric very fast, so the stitches become very big. And then I move my needle very fast, so then the stitches become smaller. So it's finding the balance between those two. I'm going to lower my foot just a little bit. That's better. So it's finding a balance between the two. You move your foot and find a steady pace where you like the size of your stitches. So there's two things. You move with your hands and you push your foot down. So that needs to be in balance to get the stitches that you want. And this is just practicing. So just go and make some lines and see what happens. If you move your fabric fast, your stitches become very big. And then go back and move your fabric a bit slower. And then my stitches are a little bit too small for my taste. So I think I want something kind of in between here. So here you see all kinds of stitches. So just make some random movements and see how it feels. See how you want to move, how fast you want to move your hands, and then adjust the height of your foot, so the speed of your needle with that. So once you get the hang of it a little bit and you find the right combination for your foot and your hands, when you feel like you're getting more comfortable, just go and try some things. Go try and maybe make some straight-ish lines. Let's see how that feels. And then maybe try to see if you can make some wavy lines. And always just stop when you want to. Don't feel hurried because your machine can go so fast. Just stop when you want to. You can go as slow as your machine can go. So when I just want to go very slow, I will just move my fabric slower. See, same kind of stitches. But here I went faster than I did here. So I just adjusted my needle speed and my hands and the speed of my hands. Some other thing you might want to try is, for example, making a zigzag. Go one direction straight, go another direction straight. Just some fun things to try and see if you can get to know your machine. If you come to a spot in your quilt where you want to follow a line, that's totally fine. It's called travel stitching. So then you can just go and try to stitch on the line that you stitched before. So now I traveled along this line from here to there. And when you zoom in very closely, of course you will see this. But imagine you having a very big quilt and you have some tiny pieces where you travel stitched. You will not really see that when you're done. Have fun. Go filling your whole practice piece and then maybe another and maybe another until you have the feeling that you can make straight lines, straight-ish lines, that you can make wavy lines, and then you can start trying to do some other things like meandering as I'm doing here. So you're making random movements. And you can see my stitch length is still not consistent. I'm honestly also still practicing and not really a pro in free motion quilting, but I enjoy it so much. It's so much fun. Oops. I caught a thread there. So just go and practice and have fun, really. Someone asked on Instagram, when I asked for questions about free motion quilting, how you can make these smooth lines. That's really about practicing. Just finding the speed that's comfortable for you to move your hands and the speed of your needle. When I was making this improv arrow quilt, I immediately know that I wanted to use this for improv quilting. And because I haven't done improv quilting for a while, I thought this would be perfect to use as a practice quilt. So I just practiced on a little test sandwich, but I'm going to use this quilt actually to practice all different kinds of free motion quilting patterns. So let me put this under my machine. I thought I would make a pretty small improv quilt so that it was easy to handle under my machine, but it got quite big. But that will allow me to show you how I handle a bigger quilt under the machine, because it's a little bit more complicated to quilt on a bigger quilt than just on your test sample. So what I'm doing is that I'm rolling up my quilt under the arm of my machine. Now I have a pretty big arm on this Janome sewing machine, but it's perfectly fine if you have a smaller one. Just roll up your quilt so that's easy to manage. That way you can actually grab that part of the quilt and move your quilt around like that, or you can move it around like this when you have your quilting gloves on. But rolling it up, it makes it easy to manage. And the next thing I did was almost made sure that my table is empty so that I have a lot of space to move. And I'm just going to put the quilt on top of me so that it's not tucking under the table. You don't want your quilt pulling anywhere because that will make it more difficult to move it around. So let me move my camera and show you what I'm going to do. So this is one of the improv blocks that I made, and what I did was I quilted some straight lines around it and not really following this shape but just making it a bit bigger, and also did that for this one. So I'm going to make rectangles around all the blocks, and then when there's an area in between I'm just going to fill it with something else. But this makes it easy for me to quilt in patches. So this is the area that I'm going to quilt right now. And I'm going to quilt all around the arrow. So I'm not going to quilt the arrow itself, and hopefully that will make the arrow pop because there's texture around it and not inside. There we go. And there is my whole area filled in. And while I was quilting this area, I didn't have the feeling that I had total control. My quilt was tugging a little bit on the front, on my lap, and I had to reposition my hands very often, and I didn't have the feeling that everything was very consistent or very even. But now when I look at it, when this piece is done, it looks okay. It's perfectly fine. So I'm happy that I'm working on this quilt as a practice quilt. That really takes the anxiety out of the quilting. So this quilt was made to practice free motion quilting on, so I should practice free motion quilting on it and don't wait until everything is perfect. Let's fill in another area with a different pattern. So this is what I had in mind, what I was going for, like some loop-tee design with triangles. So the left part of the design is way more messier and really not as pretty as I had in mind, but that's okay. I'm just picking up free motion quilting again, so it's just to practice, and this learned me something, that maybe I had too much fabric on the top of my machine laying around, because I felt that my quilt really was pulling, and I didn't take a break, I didn't rearrange my quilt, I just went on because I thought, I can do this, I can do this. And even though that's a good thought, but for this particular piece I think I should just had to stop and rearrange my quilt, or maybe even turn it so that I would quilt in another direction to make it easier for myself. As promised, I'm going to give you my top 5 beginner tips for free motion quilting. Take a simple pattern. Just go with some wavy lines, some straight-ish lines, some simple meandering or loop-de-loop, whatever you feel like, but just follow what goes easily and just try to get to know your machine and the speed of your hands first. Go slow. Really, you don't need to speed it up. Just go slow and see what feels right. Take breaks. Because, especially when you're working on a bigger quilt, it can really be straining in your shoulders and you can be working like this. At least I am often. So taking breaks, relax your shoulders, drink a cup of tea, that really helps your quilting. Doodle first. When you're first starting and have never filled a space with some doodling or drawing, just try it out first with a pencil on a piece of paper. You can take a quilting design and go start drawing it and see if you can fill the whole space with that one design. It will give you some feeling of how it's going to look. So that's a good practice before you start on a real quilt. Last one, give it time. Don't compare yourself with others. You won't paint the Mona Lisa the first time you pick up a paintbrush. And the same it is with quilting. Quilting is an art and you can develop your own style. You will get better when you practice. Just practice, practice, practice. And while you're practicing, enjoy the journey. You will get better with every stitch. Want to see more videos like this? Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's completely free and it lets YouTube know that you like these kind of videos so that more and more of my videos can be shown to quilters all around the world. Don't forget to hit the bell sign though, so you get a notification when my next video will be online. Thank you so much for watching. I asked on Instagram if you had any questions about free motion quilting and I tried to answer them all in this video. But if you have more questions, please put them in the comments below. So I can answer them in a quilting Q&A. Have fun with your free motion quilting project and I hope to see you next week. Bye bye!